next class. In today's class, we are going to discuss the last part of the chapter, Transport in Plants. Okay, so let us start with uptake and transport of mineral nutrients. See, all the while we were talking about the transport of water via xylem, we were to discuss how the different types of minerals present in the soil, they would enter the roots. Now, the entry of root or entry of the minerals inside the root here, that would be occurring a little differently than water. As you have seen throughout, that water transport is mainly going to occur passively inside the root, right? But in case of mineral nutrients, in case of mineral elements, they are going to be taken up by the root here, mostly by active transport. Okay, why is that so? It happens because of two reasons. First is the minerals mostly remain in the soil in ionic state. So most of the minerals which will be present in the soil will be found in the ionic state, and ions, then they cannot be passing through the plasma membrane readily or directly. So they have to be taken up by the root here by active transport. Alright. Another reason is that solute concentration of minerals is lower in the soil than root hair. So root hair, as you know very well, will have more of solute concentration in comparison to soil that would be found in the surrounding. So because of these two reasons, that is solute concentration in the root hair being more than the soil, and most of the minerals being in the soil in the ionic state, it is not possible for the minerals to be taken up passively along with water. Of course, a little bit of minerals may be passing through the epidermis by passive transport as well, but mostly they would be transporting by active transport. Alright, so active transport is the way by which minerals are taken up by the root hair. Do remember that. Alright. So once the minerals will enter the root hair, then what? Then how are they going to pass and reach out to the root xylem? See, once the minerals are taken up by the root hair, now they would pass from one cell to another by active transport continuously until they reach the endodermis. Okay? Just like you know that endodermal cell wall consists of suberin deposition that makes it unique. Likewise, the cell membrane of endodermis is also unique on its own. Why? Because in case of endodermis, the cell membrane possesses certain specialized membrane proteins. These membrane proteins, they will act like control points. Okay, they would decide that which kind of solute and in how much concentration can be further uploaded up till the root xylem. So they decide that what type of minerals will be allowed to pass further, and not only that, they will also decide in how much concentration they should be allowed to pass. So in that case, the xylem sap, that is water plus mineral, its composition will completely depend on the control points or the membrane proteins that are present in the endodermis. Understood this? Fine. So endodermis would play a very important role in the uptake of minerals further into the root xylem. Alright. Understood this? So this is a very important point to remember. The membrane proteins of endodermis act as control points for further uptake of minerals up to the root xylem. Also do remember that the suberin deposition that's present in the endodermis, that will also make sure that the ions, once they're actively taken up, they would only move in one single direction. That's very, very important for you to remember. Alright. So this is how the minerals are taken up by the root hair and finally they reach out to the root xylem. Now further, how will they be moving upwards? How are they going to be taken up? Once they reach the root xylem, how are they going to reach up till the leaves? Now, the transport of these minerals, once they are uploaded into the root xylem, would be occurring by the help of transpirational pull itself. Along with water, the minerals will be passed on by transpirational pull. So now, once the minerals starts moving through the xylem, they would be finally uploaded. Okay, they will be finally uploaded into the fine vein endings by diffusion and will be actively taken up by the cells. Now these minerals would mostly be reaching out to the growing parts of the plant body, like the parts where meristematic activity is occurring, say the apical meristems or lateral meristems. Likewise, they would be also occurring in the parts where young leaves are growing or young fruits or flowers are being formed. These are the parts where most of the mineral uptake will take place. Alright. Now, once the minerals have been taken up, it's not that the minerals will remain exactly in that part of the plant body forever. Okay? See, from time to time, as certain parts of the plant body would undergo senescence, will undergo aging, those minerals will be continuously remobilized from the old parts to the new parts. Okay? So here we can be dividing the minerals into two categories. The minerals which continuously move in the plant body from old part to new parts, these are called the mobile elements. Like the most common or the most efficient mobile elements would be nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium and sulfur. Okay. Likewise, also there are certain elements mainly which are going to form some structural component of the cell, say calcium. Calcium is not going to be remobilized. It is going to be wherever it would be translocated. Alright. So calcium is an immobile element. It is not going to move from old part to the new part. So this is very important. Alright, for you to remember. So the point here would be minerals, once uploaded in the plant body, they can be again of two types according to whether they are remobilized or not. That is mobile elements that can move from old to the new parts. That is nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium and sulfur. Likewise, immobile elements. That would be calcium. Alright, do remember this. Fine. So now the most important thing that comes up is that we always believe that traditionally we used to always follow, or you have learned in your lower classes, that xylem is the tissue that conducts inorganic substances, whereas phloem carries organic substances. But that is exactly not true, because while the xylem will carry most of the minerals, certain minerals, they might not be transported through the xylem in the inorganic form. For example, nitrogen. Nitrogen is one such mineral which may be taken up, part of the nitrogen will be taken up in the ionic state, in the inorganic form, fine. But also a part of it, or rather most of it, will be carried in the organic form. That means in the form of amino acids. Okay. Also, it has been seen that a partial exchange of materials will also take place between xylem and phloem. So in that case, do remember, xylem will carry both organic as well as inorganic substances. Phloem would carry organic substances. Alright. So in that case, remember this, that xylem carrying inorganic substances only won't be completely true. Rather, xylem would carry a combination of organic as well as inorganic substances. Is that clear? So let's make it a point again. Xylem carries both inorganic and organic substances. So these are certain important points that you must remember from uptake and transport of mineral nutrients. Alright, I hope all of you are clear up till this. Now let's discuss another important part, that is rather the last part of this chapter, that is phloem transport. We have learned so much regarding the xylem transport so far into the chapter. Now let's discuss phloem transport. Phloem mainly is the major conducting tissue which would allow transport of food throughout the plant body. Now this food is nothing but sucrose plus water. Okay, mostly the phloem would carry sugar in the form of sucrose and of course water. Together, sugar plus water is organic solute. So we can say that phloem translocates organic solute, okay, throughout the plant body and bidirectionally. Most important is that for you to remember, phloem transports bidirectionally, alright, because xylem transports unidirectionally, alright. Now, phloem, how does it transport materials? That is explained under a hypothesis. That's called pressure flow hypothesis or mass flow hypothesis. It was proposed by E. Munch and was elaborated by Krauts. Okay. Now, what is the pressure flow hypothesis, or how exactly phloem transport would take place? Let us observe that, or let us learn that. See, during the daytime, when sunlight is incident on the leaves, that is, the mesophyll cells are directly getting sunlight, it is at that time that the mesophyll cells will continuously undergo photosynthesis. Now do remember, in photosynthesis, the product of photosynthesis is glucose, but it is transported in the form of sucrose. And finally, it is stored in the form of starch. It's very important. Alright? Now, finally, see what would happen. Once the mesophyll cells will produce sugar, okay? I'm not confusing you here with glucose, sucrose, starch and all. I'm just going to take the term sugar, so that you can really understand what's happening here. So, when the mesophyll cells are conducting photosynthesis, they are producing sugar, right? Now, this sugar will be immediately, see, nearby to the mesophyll cells in these veins and veinlets are present the vascular bundles, that is xylem as well as phloem, right? And the major conducting element in the phloem is sieve tubes, right? Like xylem have two conducting elements, that is tracheids and vessels. In case of phloem, there is only one conducting element, that is sieve tube. So this sugar that will be formed by the mesophyll cells due to photosynthesis, this sugar will be immediately transported, or it will be uploaded into the nearby sieve tube through companion cells. This uploading of the sugar will be actively done. Okay, actively the sugar would be passed on to the nearby sieve tubes which are present in the veins. Okay, so it will be, as soon as sugar is formed in the mesophyll cells, the sugar would be actively transported into the sieve tubes through companion cells. Alright, understood this? Once that happens, okay, that means in the sieve tubes, now sugar content becomes high, solute concentration becomes high. So when solute becomes high, what would happen? From the nearby xylem, water would get inside the sieve tubes. Okay, of course, you know about endoosmosis by now already properly, that whenever solute concentration will increase in a cell, from the nearby cells, water would run into it, into the cell, right? So in that case, when the sieve tubes are filled up with sugar, from the nearby xylem, water would be drawn, or water would be reaching out to the sieve tube. So now that sieve tube will have sugar plus water, and sugar plus water is called organic solute. So finally organic solute will be formed, right? So as organic solute is formed, finally, see, whenever in any kind of entrapped space, if water would enter, what will happen? By now you should be able to answer this question, that whenever into a space water would enter, what will happen? A positive pressure will be built up, isn't it? So in the leaves, as soon as organic solute is formed in the sieve tube, a positive hydrostatic pressure will be built up there, right? So a high pressure will be maintained in the sieve tube where food is present, and in the plant part where food is present, we call that part to be source, okay? So in the source, always a high pressure will be maintained. Is that clear? So now that a high pressure is maintained at the source, the part of the plant body that is starving, we call that part to be sink, okay? Suppose the leaf would be the source now in my example. So suppose in the root, the cells are starving, so we call it the sink, okay? So in the sink, the phloem do not have any food material in it, so the sieve tubes in the sink will be of course maintained at a lower pressure. So source will be always maintained at a higher pressure, whereas sink will be maintained at a lower pressure, okay? So due to this, a pressure gradient already has been created, and because phloem would translocate materials bidirectionally, it will always sense the source and the sink according to the pressure gradient. Wherever pressure is high, that would be considered source. Wherever pressure is low, will be considered sink, and phloem will translocate materials always from source to sink. That's how it makes the decision that in which direction the flow should happen. Alright. So now finally, due to this pressure gradient from source to sink, the phloem will translocate the organic solute. Now, as soon as the sugar reaches the sink, what will happen? The starving cells, they will start taking up the sugar from the sieve tube, but this will also be done actively. Okay, actively the sugar would be uploaded into the starving cells in the sink. So when the sugar moves into the sink, so now the sieve tube at the sink will be left out only with water. Only water will be left out in the sieve tube at the sink right now, right? So the sieve tubes now have only water in it, whereas the nearby xylem in the sink, I'm talking only about the sink right now, the nearby xylem in the sink has water plus minerals. So where is the solute concentration high now? In the xylem, of course, isn't it? So in that case, all the water from the sieve tube will run back into the xylem. As soon as the water runs back into the xylem, don't you think the sieve tube in the sink again will be maintained at a negative pressure, whereas by that time, due to another round of upload, the source will be maintained at a higher pressure. So another pressure gradient will be created, and hence another round of phloem transport would begin. Alright, so this is what is pressure flow hypothesis. I think all of you are clear about it. So with that, this chapter is completed. I hope all of you have understood all the processes by which transport occurs inside the plant body. Next class will start a new chapter, that is mineral nutrition.